The Biden administration is asking the Supreme Court to ixnay the new Texas immigration law. Greg Abbott of Texas is basically taking the law into his own hands because the federal government isn't doing it. Now, the feds are asking for a ruling from the Supreme Court. If they don't make one, this goes into effect, and things are going to get even spicier at the border. Let's get into it. Here we go. Biden administration asked the Supreme Court to block the Texas immigration law. Seems like the Biden administration's always asking for some chicken shit, aren't they? I mean, just, let's go do this. In this one, what is so interesting is the Biden administration, we got a ruling. We're able to cut the razor wire. Now, why do you need to cut the razor? Well, we'd be able to help these people and perform our duties, Customs and Border Protection, as Uber drivers to get them to the nearest migrant center. And so, we don't want them to be hurt or anything. So we're going to go and snip the razor wire. Hasn't been much of that, has there? Because for the most part, the feds have stepped back from Eagle Pass. They've stepped back from the Del Rio sector. And now you've got everybody going up to California. You got everybody going up to Arizona, the Tucson sector. The Biden administration on Monday asked the Supreme Court to block Texas from enforcing an immigration law known as SB 4 that would allow state law enforcement officials to arrest migrants suspected of crossing into the U.S. without authorization. One of the most far-reaching state immigration laws in modern U.S. history, Senate Bill 4. That's why we are reading this. It is one of the most, we're going for it, guys. We're going for it. We're going to die on this hill. Either which way, we're going to make this stand, right? Senate Bill 4 would empower Texas law enforcement officials to stop, jail, and prosecute migrants on state criminal charges of illegal entry or reentry. Kind of like what they're doing now. Now you've got a race between Texas's National Guard and Customs and Border Protection. If you're a migrant, you want to see Border Protection coming your way. Coming towards you. You do not want to see Texas National Guard. Oh, good Lord, we might get deported. Not our day. So you can see why the cartel is just doing an end around and they're not sending many people through Eagle Pass, where this story is kind of originating from, because that's ground zero for Operation Lone Star. It would also allow state judges to issue de facto deportation orders against suspected violators of the law. And what the opponents of Senate Bill 4 are, what they're continually harping about is if they allow Texas to do it, all of these border states are good. They're all going to protect their own borders. And we can't have that. We need it to just be a free for all. Now, they go into the fact that the border is the jurisdiction of the federal government. Where that falls apart is when the federal government doesn't do its job. That's where it falls apart. Hey, you're not doing your job, so we're going to step in and do it. And that's exactly what Abbott has done. But there's this notion that, okay, if you do it, then, Georgia is kind of going down some of these same deals, right? Georgia's doing some work. Who's also doing some work? Aurora, Colorado. They're going after shoplifters. They are saying no to the big migrant centers in their community. Yeah, even though we're close to Denver, don't bring your migrants to Aurora, Colorado. And if you shoplift here, $100 or more, I think that's what it was, you're going to do some time. Aurora, Colorado, you got my vote. Last week, U.S. District Court Judge David Ezra, he's the guy that just loves Biden, granted a request from the Justice Department and the ACLU. That should tell you something. If the ACLU asks for anything, we don't like it because it is ridiculous. It is a shenanigan and it just messes up the legal system. That's what the ACLU does, right? And they temporarily blocked the Texas state officials from enforcing Senate Bill 4, which was set to take effect on Tuesday, today, March the 5th. So this was a bill that got signed by Greg Abbott of Texas back in December. So we've had this fuse being lit. And so it goes into effect today. But what happened is that a local court basically said, nope, we're going to put a stay on that. And then an appeals court put a stay on that and said, Supreme Court, you're the one that's going to have to rule on this bad boy. So this knucklehead, David Ezra, he ruled that immigration arrests and deportations are federal responsibilities and rejected Texas's argument that the state is facing an invasion by migrants. Talked about that yesterday. Well, how many people do you have to have coming across the border illegally for it to count as an invasion? How many? I mean, they don't have to be armed. You can still have an invasion. But I get what he's kind of saying. It's not an invasion. They're just, mostly peaceful migrants. Tell that gal that just recently had her skull rearranged, right? Guy couldn't. Oh, so terrible. So terrible. But at Texas's request, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals over the weekend suspended Ezra's order on administrative grounds while it hears the merits of an appeal. On Monday, yesterday, after the Justice Department asked the Supreme Court to intervene, Justice Samuel Alito paused the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals order through Wednesday, March 13th. All right, so what they're doing that is it's giving Texas until the end of the business day next Monday to plead its case. And then if the Supreme Court sides with Texas, Senate Bill 4 could take effect on March 13th. Just boom, go time. I would love to see it go through. I do not think it will. I do not think it will. I just don't. It would just be, it opens up a Pandora's box. And I think Greg Abbott knows that. But what he's counting on is, all right, if I get a no there, I'm just going to still keep doing my thing. Operation Lone Star, nothing changes. Everything is still full tilt. Biden's going to have to come in and basically wrestle me for control in Shelby Park, in Eagle Pass, to make some kind of grandstand effect. The other thing that we've got going on that I'm kind of following closely is right now you've got the Mexican government. They are basically taking people, Mexican military is catching people going towards the northern end of Mexico, going towards the southern border, U.S.-Mexico border. And they are basically sending those people back to the south end of Mexico, down on the southern Mexico border, far, far away. They're basically deporting them, making them do the end run again. So you've got a kind of a pause in the numbers going on right now. I know yesterday and over the weekend, they've had a spike in numbers, but mainly in Arizona and in California. The spike in numbers is not happening in Texas, and I don't think it will for a while. But as that weather gets better, and then also as Mexico typically poops out on these little mini efforts to really kind of try and, stop some of the people from coming through, you're going to have some massive, massive spikes. And I think that's what Greg Abbott is kind of positioning himself moving forward. So I think what you're going to see is right before the election, late this spring, early this summer, Mexico is going to kind of given up, and you're going to have the weather, and you're going to have this lull of people wanting to get across the border into the United States, because who knows, maybe Trump's our guy in 2024 and he gets elected. And he's already said, I'm going to deport everybody. I'm going to deport 8 million people. You're like, okay, I'll get out the popcorn. Let's watch it happen. I want to see how that goes. There's no way he can. I mean, even deporting 1 million people is just a massive, massive undertaking. And I don't see that happening. But this is political speak before an election. So what you've got going is you've got this alignment of things happening right before the election. You're going to have some escalating numbers of people coming across the border. You're going to have a ton of people going into California, a ton of people going into Arizona, not that many people going into Texas, but way more going into Texas than you have now, because it's all it's like all quiet on the Western Front in Texas right now. You're getting, a handful of people coming across the Rio in Texas, whereas you're having literally thousands, 4,000 people in a little area coming across in a single day. Not not crazy. And those numbers have gone up to maybe 7,000 across the border right now. But, 10, 11, 12,000 on a daily basis consistently, those were the numbers where you got to 302,000 in the month of December 2023. So Biden administration says that Senate Bill 4 interferes with federal immigration enforcement. If you weren't doing federal immigration enforcement, what does it really interfere with? Immigration is the jurisdiction of the federal government. Yeah, we get that. We understand that. But you weren't doing it before. You were acting as Uber and Lyft drivers. So again, we go with Texas is willing to take on border responsibilities on its own and kick people out who are coming in illegally, which the federal government is supposed to be doing, but they're not. So what do you say to that there, ice cream eating Joe? It ignores U.S. asylum law and it jeopardizes foreign relations with the Mexican government. Does the Mexican government give two shits about this? They just don't want these people in their country. They're like, pass them through, send them through. Oh man, Biden came down here and he talked to us again. He kind of scolded us and said, you guys need to get off your asses and do something. You guys are making me look bad. Had record numbers of immigration through the southern border. What are you guys doing? They had that talk at some point. I don't know how that went, over an ice cream cone. I'm not really sure. And it's denounced the state law as an anti-immigrant measure. Yeah, because you need one. You had record flows into the country of people who we don't know who they are that are unvetted. That's just not reasonable. Not reasonable. I am not anti-immigration. I am anti-immigration the way that it's going right now. Somebody's really got a reason for needing in. All right, there's a due process you go through. But the vast majority of the folks that we're dealing with here will not get the opportunity to stay in the United States. So what are we doing? I mean, we're just paying for their room, housing, board, trying to get them jobs. We're just bending over backwards for millions of people that don't legally have the right to be here. It's okay. It'll work out fine. Just keep going. Just keep going. I mean, they're going to be, newcomers. Newcomers is the new term, right? Beyond its disruptive foreign relations effects, Senate Bill 4 would create chaos in the United States' efforts to administer federal immigration laws in Texas. No, that's the other way around. That's the other way around. You're getting it wrong here. It's your lack of securing the border that has created this situation right here. The legal fight over Senate Bill 4 is one of many clashes between Texas and President Biden over immigration policy. Biden's policy, he doesn't even have one. It's just let them run through, let them run train on the border and it'll all work out, right? I mean, 64 executive actions and administrative deals that he's done to change up how things go. Day one, stopped building the wall. I mean, the whole thing is just, it was closed for 3 years and then all of a sudden it's a major catastrophe. We got to do something. We got to get some money up in here and got to get some more federal border officers. The two sides have clashed over razor wire and buoys that Texas officials have assembled near or in the middle of the Rio Grande. You notice they haven't done anything about the floating barriers. They haven't done anything really about the razor wire. It's a non-issue. Since January, Texas National Guard soldiers have also blocked federal patrol agents from processing migrants in a park in Eagle Pass because all they were doing is just, instead of kicking them back across the border, they were just bringing them in, literally, in the van full. Just bring them in, and we'll get them on buses and we'll get them up to Denver. We'll get them up to New York City. We'll get them up to Chicago. If you look at the cities where Greg Abbott has sent people, pretty impressive. The numbers are pretty impressive. For $140 million, that's what he spent so far. $140 million. He's done a lot of damage. So at Abbott's direction, Texas has bused tens of thousands of migrants from the U.S.-Mexico border to large Democrat-led cities, New York, Chicago, and Denver. Those cities are just having a tough time, aren't they? So here's the other, this is the Hill. Supreme Court temporarily blocks the Texas law that allows police to arrest migrants. And that's what you've got going on right now. You've got a situation where, okay, we got to have the Supreme Court take a look at this, make a ruling. I don't think it goes in Texas's favor. I'd love to see that. But I think this was a try for. But what this does is puts the magnifying glass on it and makes people take a look and go, what is actually going on here? Because why would Texas need to basically set up their own laws? Their laws do not supersede the federal laws. They're just they're basically making them in addition to. And that's kind of where we sit. So I don't think there's anything too crazy on this one. Yeah, it's an emergency request. The Justice Department filed an emergency request Monday asking the Supreme Court to intervene, with Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar arguing the law would alter the status quo that has existed between the United States and the states in context of immigration for almost 150 years. But the thing is that everybody knows that the immigration system is broken. And in the last 3 years, it has been wildly, wildly exploited. And that is what people are worked up about. And they're saying, hey, if Abbott wants to jump in and do his thing, let him. But then you've got that whole thing of the other states. You're not going to have California doing this kind of stuff. You're not going to have Arizona doing this kind of stuff. You're just not, right? New Mexico? No, hell no. No. And so as a result, I think with the numbers that are going to come in spring and in summer, right before the election and fall, number of people coming in, if they just go at the border, it's going to be really entertaining to see kind of how all that turns out, because this is the number one issue in the 2024 election. This is getting a lot of heat, and you can kind of see why, because there's so many different angles to this. Now these sanctuary cities are basically saying, all right, yep, that whole thing about getting everybody housing, we're going to cut that. We're going to cut. Denver right now is cutting. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. Denver right now is cutting 4 migrant shelters because they got to, take it from 180 million down to 120 million. By cutting these 4 shelters, they can save themselves $60 million. In the meantime, you've got, illegals from all over the world living on the sidewalk in tents in Denver and various other cities in the surrounding area. And that some would say that's not necessarily going all that well. Shocking, right? And this all is happening and ramping up as we head into that election. Should be spicy. Should be a spicy season. Let's read this one. Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Monday hailed huge news from an appeals court rule pertaining to the U.S.-Mexico border. In recent months, Abbott, a Republican, and his administration have been engaged in a heated back and forth with federal forces over who has the authority over the southern border. I think Abbott has really done a great job of basically standing within his right to do what he needs to do to not only secure the border, but secure the state of Texas. And that's where Biden has just blown it. He's like, it's a federal deal. Yeah, but you weren't doing your job. So let's step aside there, Sleepy Joe, and let somebody else, run the ball on this one, because you're clearly just, what are you doing? What are you even doing? Oh, we need to get in there and snip that razor wire, because then we can really get those numbers up back to where we were in December of 2023. Abbott, like many others in the GOP, has characterized the recent influx of migrants crossing into the U.S. as a crisis. This is Newsweek. That's why I love reading from like Newsweek, CNBC, CNN, because you can always just, well, what is it when you have 302,034 people come across in a month? What is that other than, at base levels, a crisis? What is that? It's just, we've got a little bit of concern. We're going to have to reimagine and rethink some different words for crisis, because that is far too strong. Or assault, or incursion. I don't know. Any of those words are good, right? And he's attempted to leverage more authority for his state government to police the situation. Yes and no. His primary thing is just to secure the border. And he wouldn't be doing that if the federal government was already doing that. He's spending a lot of money on doing this himself, when this should be the jurisdiction of the federal government, Customs and Border Protection. But clearly it is not right now, and that's the whole crux of the matter, right? Legal experts have countered that the U.S. Constitution grants the federal government authority over matters concerning immigration. And that's where I think Texas will lose. But, they lose the battle, not the fight, or fight, not the battle, whatever that is. On Thursday, a lower court in Texas blocked the implementation of the state's legislator Senate Bill 4. We know the outcome of that is. Then we had a temporary halt. So it's been going through the court system, and now we sit with, all right, Supreme Court. They're going to, without any intervention from the highest court in the land, the law will then be implemented. Boom, go. I don't think that happens. I do not see that happening. Taking to his official X, formerly known as Twitter account on Monday, Abbott hailed that ruling as huge news. He's gonna ride every little bit of this in his favor and just basically say, hey, we won this one. We won this one. And it's true. He did. The appeals court said, all right, we're going to open up for Supreme Court to take a look. Otherwise, this bad boy goes into effect on, what was it, March the 13th? Something like that. Critics of the law, which Abbott signed back in December, have argued that its implementation would lead to a major increase in racial profiling in Texas. El Paso County, a major point of entry for migrants crossing the border, also joined in with the Department of Justice in suing the Texas government over the bill, claiming that a spike in arrests that it would produce would put an excessive strain on its jail system. So, racial profiling. Okay. When you've got 8 million people living in the United States, basically illegally, is racial profiling really that high on your priority list? No, it's not. And an excessive strain on its jail system. I don't know. I say we give it a whirl. I say we just, why not? Let her rip. Let her rip. Let's just take a look, see, and see what happens. I mean, don't be a wiener, right? Don't be a wiener. Just let her happen. and see what would happen. Let Texas worry about its excessive strain on its jail system, right? Let Texas worry about that. I got a feeling they would figure it out, right? They'd spread the love around, kind of like they've spread the love around with bus rides for all to wherever you want to go. You want to go out to San Diego? We'll get you a bus ride there. You want to go here? You want to go there? What's crazy is cities like Denver are flying people from there because it's a hub, kind of like Dallas. Dallas is flying people. It's absolutely insane, but you can get better plane rides from those areas. And Denver specifically has been that one location where initially, and I did an entire podcast on that yesterday, so you can check that out. Abbott and other Texas officials have claimed that the law is necessary and that the state has the right to more actively police immigration, claiming that it's entitled to defend itself from an invasion. That's where people get into the semantics. That's not really an invasion. Well, I don't know. The sheer number of people that have gone across the southern border, if you were standing there, if your home were on the southern border, I think you would say, that's a damn invasion. I don't think you'd have any other words for it. You'd have a bunch of Democrats going, we're being overrun. It's an invasion of the worst sort. They're just coming in. They're taking our resources. They're stealing our Thanksgiving meal because they're getting there early and we're not. Literally had that happen in Chicago. Did a podcast on that as well. And arguing that the migrant influx constitutes an invasion, an assertion that critics have strongly disagreed with. No, because it doesn't look good. Because if it is an invasion, then you do some drastic stuff. And that's what Governor Greg Abbott has done here. That's what he's doing. He is pushing this legally to the limit. And I love it. I think it's the greatest thing ever. It's like, right on. Okay. Yeah, why not? Let's just see what happens. Meantime, numbers are wildly down in that Del Rio sector, right? They're wildly down. And like I said earlier, some of that is time of the year, January, February, typically a couple of months where you don't have as many numbers, but those are starting to tick up. We had 124,000 total come across in January. February, which just wrapped up, we had 140,000, so 16,000 more. But what we're expecting to see, is upwards of that 10,000 a day. Then you get into 300,000 mark, and that's double what we're talking about now. That is what I think will happen a few months out from the election, and it'll be shenanigans. It'll be just a lot of just, reading the numbers every day. Well, so far this many came through. Do you guys think that'll happen? Let me know in the comments. I do. I really do. All right, I'm going to wrap up this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe if you haven't. Hit that notification bell, hit all that good stuff. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for watching, being part of the community, and I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.